Happy birthday, Disneyland! On July 17th, 1955, Disneyland opened its doors for the first time, and there are still some attractions that were open on opening day that are still available to ride 68 years later, and I'm going to be taking you through all of them. Starting off with Autopia, the only existing Tomorrowland attraction from opening day. The original ride was designed to represent the future of travel, multi-lane highways, which were still in development in 1955. Like many other attractions, it needed funding sponsor, which was the Richfield Oil Corporation from 1955 until 1970. The operation of the cars is very simple. You use the steering wheel to steer, but there are guide rails on the ground that keep you on track, and your foot needs to stay on the gas. If you release the gas, it automatically brakes. There are bumpers on either end of the car, which actually did not exist in the original test models, but these are not bumper cars. Autopia has undergone several renovations over the years, including a Chevron sponsorship from 2000 to 2012 until Honda took over in 2016. If you know anything about Walt Disney, you might know that he loved trains, so it's no surprise that the Disneyland Railroad exists. Two steam engines, engine number 1, C.K. Holliday, who was the founder of Atchison and Topeka Railroad, and number 2, E.P. Ripley, president of the Atchison and Topeka and Santa Fe Railroad, were in operation on opening day. Originally, there were just 2 stations, Main Street and Frontierland, but 1 year later, the Fantasyland Depot opened in 1956, which was in operation until 1966 when It's a Small World opened. In 1958, the Tomorrowland station opened, followed by the Videopolis station in 1985, but that was replaced by Mickey's Toontown Depot in 1993 when Mickey's Toontown opened. Jumping back to 1958, that's when engine number 3, Fred Gurley, arrived, which was the oldest operating steam engine in the park, built in 1894, and Gurley was the president of the Santa Fe Railway. In 1959, they expanded once again with engine number 4, Ernest S. Marsh, named for the president of the Santa Fe Railroad at the time. It wasn't until 2005 that engine number 5, Ward Kimball, arrived. Unlike the other steam engines who are named for people in the railroad industry, Kimball was a Disney animator, one of Walt's original 9 old men who started working for Disney in 1934 and was also a fan of railroads just like Walt. It takes about 18 to 20 minutes for the full loop, depending on how many trains are running and how much time it takes between stops. You can get on at any station, Main Street, New Orleans, Toontown, or Tomorrowland, but I like riding the whole thing, which is about 1.2 miles. But if it's not just about the ride, don't forget to check out inside Main Street Station, artifacts and memorabilia, and maybe even some hidden characters as well. In addition to trains, Walt Disney loved the natural world and animals, so much so that he wanted to integrate animals into a ride at his new theme park. Originally titled the Jungle River Cruise, Jungle Cruise is the last opening day attraction in Adventureland. Walt was so much so a fan of animals that he wanted real animals on the ride, but safety concerns and the realization that animals would be likely sleeping during the day quickly put an end to that. Another concern for the whole of Disneyland, but specifically for this, was the budget for building a man-made river and gathering the plants to make the area appear natural, tropical, and lush. Plants were even placed upside down to look unique, and today, Jungle Cruise has a fully self-sufficient ecosystem. Of course, the animatronics have improved today on the ride compared to what we had opening day, but one of the biggest differences compared to the original version of the ride is the skipper narration, which was originally more like a nature documentary, but today you can take a cruise through the rivers of the world and laugh along at the skipper's puns. Do you know what the oldest attraction in Fantasyland is? It's actually the King Arthur Carousel. The carousel had previously been in operation at Sunnyside Beach Park in Toronto, Ontario from 1922 until the park closed, and it was relocated to Anaheim ahead of Disneyland's opening. Of course, it was in need of some modifications and refurbishments upon its arrival, which included widening it to accommodate more riders at a time. It is the first ride that you see when you walk into Fantasyland through the castle, and today features scenes from Sleeping Beauty along the top and plays music from various Disney movies. The most popular horse has to be Jingles, who emerged during the 50th anniversary of Disneyland when she was painted gold and taken off the ride to be used as a photo op. But after being reinstalled, she was painted once again and dedicated to Julie Andrews, who was the official ambassador for the 50th anniversary celebration. Originally located right behind the carousel was the Mad Tea Party, one of my personal favorite attractions. Inspired by Alice in Wonderland, you can enjoy your spin in one of 18 colorful teacups. There are 3 turntables rotating clockwise with 6 teacups each, all on one larger turntable that rotates counterclockwise. And if that wasn't enough to make your head spin, you can control how fast your teacup spins by moving the center wheel. This attraction is at 4 other Disney parks around the world, but the Disneyland version is the only uncovered version and cannot operate in heavy rain. As I mentioned, this has moved locations, and from when it first opened and was closer to the Carousel, it is now in the Little Alice corner next to the Alice in Wonderland attraction and the Mad Hatter in Fantasyland shop. Heading out of Fantasyland and onto Main Street is Main Street Cinema. This is located on the right side of Main Street as you're entering Disneyland, and Main Street Cinema originally showed several silent movies. But by the 1970s, they were replaced with 6 to 8 minute Disney shorts with a recorded musical accompaniment. These are shorts that originally aired before a full-length film, and of the 6 screens, 5 are played currently without audio, and Steamboat Willie, which introduced the world to Mickey Mouse, plays with the original iconic sound. Main Street Cinema has been removed from Walt Disney World and Tokyo Disneyland, where it was an opening day attraction at both parks, but it still lives on here at Disneyland and is a great place to have a quiet moment. And don't forget to say hi to Tilly on your way in. Her name is a reference to working at a till or a ticket booth, and you'll notice that her hometown is a reference to Walt Disney's hometown of Marceline, Missouri. Departing from Frontierland throughout the day is the Mark Twain Riverboat, a 105-foot-long riverboat that stands at 28 feet tall. There are 3 levels to the Mark Twain, and I don't think that there is a bad spot to sit or stand while you enjoy your trip on the rivers of America. Technically, the maiden voyage of the Mark Twain took place 4 days before the park opened on July 13th during a special celebration to commemorate Walt and Lillian Disney's 30th wedding anniversary. It was christened on opening day by actress Irene Dunne, star of the movie Showboat. You did used to be able to enjoy a non-alcoholic mint julep on board and maybe even some live music from the Disneyland band, but today you can just enjoy your voyage along the rivers of America to see audio animatronic wildlife, a shaman, an indigenous tribe, and usually some ducks and geese as well. Heading into Fantasyland for a ride that's a little bit less relaxing for a trip on Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. This is a great example of a classic dark ride where the guest is supposed to be the titular character, in this case Mr. Toad, who did not appear in the original version of the ride. It used a lot of 2-dimensional plywood flats to tell the story, and it wasn't until 1961 that some upgrades and technical improvements were made for the ride. As I mentioned, the concept of being Mr. Toad was kind of lost on guests at first, so the second iteration of the ride was introduced in 1983 when New Fantasyland reopened, which is what we can still experience to this day. You can enjoy, or not, a bumpy ride through the English countryside before your demise and trip to somewhere warm. This was an opening day attraction at Walt Disney World as well, but it closed in 1998 and was replaced with the Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. So it is something you can only ride at Disneyland, but I have heard about a few hidden toads on Winnie the Pooh as a nod to its predecessor. One of the most popular attractions, not just in Fantasyland, but in the entire park, is Peter Pan's Flight. Just like on Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, Peter Pan did not appear in the original version of the ride when it first opened, since the rider was supposed to be Peter. Again, this concept was lost on a lot of guests, but I think what made it even more confusing was that the Darling Children, Lost Boys, and the Mermaids didn't even appear in the original version of the ride. The original was extremely simple. This lasted until 1982 when the New Fantasyland refresh began, opening again in May 1983, which is largely the same version we know and love today. After waiting in the queue, which, as I've mentioned, is generally on the long side, and boarding your galleon, you take a ride through the story of Peter Pan. Your ship is suspended from above you, so you really feel like you're flying over and alongside the story, starting in the Darling family nursery. Next, we fly over London to see some sights at night before reaching Neverland and seeing some of our favorite scenes and characters. Of course, the first ever Disney princess has a ride at Disneyland, which opened as Snow White and Her Adventures. Like I mentioned, for Mr. Toad and Peter Pan, Snow White was not present in the original version of the ride, as you were supposed to be her, but this was later updated, at first in the 1970s. 1983's New Fantasyland once again saw renovations for this ride, as well as a lot of other aspects of Fantasyland, and the ride was renamed to Snow White's Scary Adventures. This included the addition of the Evil Queen on top of the building, where you can see her kind of looking down over Fantasyland, and she will open and close the curtains every few minutes. The ride closed once again for refurbishments at the start of 2020, which included the third rename to Snow White's Enchanted Wish. Next up, we've got a ride that actually did not do so well at first, closing after just 2 months of operation. Originally called Canal Boats of the World, this was only open for 2 months before closing and reopening the following June of 1956. This ride was a compromise because the plans for a Lilliputian land, essentially a miniature city, could not be completed due to the technological, financial, and time constraints that they were facing while getting Disneyland built. The original Canal Boats of the World planned to go through many landmarks around the world, but even at opening, there were problems due to the boats, lack of landscaping, and they just couldn't get all of the scenes built. In 1956, it reopened, much like what we can experience to this day, starting with going through the mouth of Monstro from Pinocchio and passing through the homes of classic characters including Alice, Cinderella, Mr. Toad, and more. Of course, it has since been updated to include homes of Aladdin, The Little Mermaid, and Frozen, and although you don't actually see any of these characters on the ride, there are a few of the settings where you can hear some singing if you listen closely. There are 13 different canal boats in operation, each with their own unique touches and design that are quintessentially Disneyland. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed getting to know Disneyland's opening day attractions. Let me know if you enjoyed in the comments below, and don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you're not already, and I'll see you in my next video again really soon.